You know, it's interesting. I was just watching a celebrity who was interviewed on a radio show, and they were just like, you married and now you're divorced. Would you marry again? And she's just like, nope,
Heck no.
Not married again. Check that box. Did it, done it.
Oh,
I'm good.
Really?
Yeah. There's a lot of wives that don't want to be wives. They just want to be married women.
A lot of times women have been hurt. They've been wounded by different circumstances, or they've been worn all the way the heck out, and they're just looking for an escape. It's easier. You know how they say it's cheaper to keep her?
Yeah.
It is, because you know what? Guess what? If you have something, she's taking half, period, or more. But it's also oftentimes easier to be apart as a wife. It's easier to just be friends.
All right, everybody, welcome to After Infidelity. My name is Hasani Pettiford.
I'm Danielle Pettiford.
And we're here to have a great conversation. Over the last couple of days, we've been talking about relational issues. Oftentimes, after an affair has taken place and you've kind of gone through that journey of dealing with the affair-related issues, now you're left with the marriage, the relationship. There were challenges before the betrayal, and there are even more after. And oftentimes, men and women are in a state of ambiguity, not sure if they want to stay, if they want to go. But the focus of this conversation is to talk about how there's such a high percentage of wives who are leaving at enormous rates. And statistics would suggest that 70% of wives are the ones who initiate divorce, but amongst college-aged wives, or I should say college-educated wives, it's 97%. So the more educated they are, when they experience dissatisfaction in their marriage, they are out. They're not sticking around. And this is a program that we have for the men. It's called Irreplaceable Husbands. And I remember one of the men saying some time ago, our wives are not looking for a reason to leave. We've given them plenty reasons to leave. What they're looking for is a reason to stay. I thought that was extremely profound because it's very true. But in today's conversation, I want to go deep dive into really unpacking the reasons why so many women are leaving. And I know that that's been an epidemic. And as you deal with women, I'm sure you're dealing with their frustrations and their concerns about whether they want to stay or go.
Yeah. Interesting. We just had a guest. Her name is Tracy Bryant. She was one of my first guests on the Suitable Helper podcast. And she shared a really interesting perspective. That show topic was called Divorce, Expectations versus Reality. And I wanted her to come on. She is divorced. And I wanted her to come on and talk to us about what that really looks like. People have these expectations. I'm going to live my best life. I'm going to escape these problems. And then there's the reality. But her story is so interesting because, there was no infidelity or anything like that. They were in crisis because they were running at such a high pace to keep up with the demands and expectations of societal expectations for them. They were an couple. They had a very successful business together, similar to ours, actually. And, she was just running at a pace that was literally killing her. And when she went to her husband to express this to him, he didn't have a plan for her to put anything down. It was kind of just like, well, it's your choice to do all these things. So just stop doing it. I need your help over here. And her thing was just like, okay, but if I stop doing these things, now the income is going to stop coming in that affords us to live in this home, to drive these cars, to go on the vacations. And he wasn't willing for her to stop doing that. And so over time, she was still running at that pace. She had multiple businesses she was running. He needed her help. And she was just feeling like literally, if I don't just stop, I'm going to die. She literally thought she was going to die. And I feel like that is a great allegory for what's happening, because many women feel that they're running at this pace that they can't even keep up with at this point, trying to keep up with the Joneses, the expectations. Things have changed so much in society. We were designed to help, of course, but a lot of wives are helping and then some, right? A lot of wives are creating foundations in the family. They're running it. They have businesses, and then nothing stops when they come home. And so it's kind of like this perpetual cycle. I was actually talking to somebody this week, a different person, and she was sharing with me just the fact that the pace that she's running at is so exhausting, and she literally can't keep up. And there was a time when all she had to do was just focus on, taking care of the family. That's all she had to focus on. And she was thriving in that space. She was the one taking care of the home. She was taking care of the children. Everything had a great system. She wasn't responsible for making sure that there was lights on and security. But when that shifted and she then had to go out and help make income to finance their needs. And then still, though, she still had to be the crux, the hub and spoke of home. It starts to weigh on a woman. And that's when we start counting the cost. You said we're not looking for a reason to leave, but we're looking for a reason to stay.
Yeah.
That's when we start counting the cost. Like, why am I here? If I'm doing all this, why am I here?
So a couple of years ago, I went to a conference, and it was designed for men, married men who own businesses. And it was talking about successful men. One of the problems that they ultimately face is either burnout or boredom, right? And it seems like burnout, that would be the word that would kind of describe what many wives are experiencing in their relationships. And so they get to a point where they can't take it anymore. They're ready to tap out. They're ready to just tap out and say uncle, because it becomes too overwhelming. I wonder, is that directly related or totally responsible, in terms of what the man is doing or not doing, or is it their inability to kind of negotiate and navigate through these challenges by having open and honest conversations, setting proper expectations? Like, is it all the man's fault? Or their contributions of the female?
I hope I didn't articulate it in that way, that it's all the man's fault. But, you asked a specific question about why are women leaving? And these conversations are being had. I think it's probably a lot of that. I think it's probably honest conversations are not being had, or when conversations are being had, maybe the husband isn't hearing really what's happening, because a wife can call out. She can say, I can't take this anymore. I'm exhausted. I think we do that. I think we I need your help. I need your help. And a husband will say, okay, I'm going to help you. Right. And so what are those areas that he's going to help in, right? Is it with the children? Is it with the domestic parts of running a household? Like all those different areas that a woman needs help in, he may not be competent in those areas, right? For example, and this is, some men are really good. Some men are very domestic. But in the conversation that I was having recently, one of the issues was, I go away and I'm making money. I'm at a conference and I'm making money, and I come home and the laundry is piled up to the roof. So that particular person, that particular man, didn't have it in him to be organized, to sort the clothes, to wash and dry, fold. Some are domestic like that, some are not.
Yeah.
So the point is that there is a lot of responsibility on the woman. If you compare it to any corporation, right? Your marriage is a business, right? If you compare it to any business, there are people in position to help the boss, the CEO, do all the things, just like the military analogy, right? Well, a wife doesn't usually have that team, not in America. If you live in a country where it's, a couple of quarters to have somebody serve you, cook your food, there are certain places where you can go where you literally do have a team. And us wives, we're trying to be like the Proverbs 31 woman. The Proverbs 31 woman, she actually had a team. She had handmaidens. Handmaidens would do the laundry. Handmaidens would wash her body. Handmaidens would cook the food, would care for her children, so that the Proverbs 30 woman, who was a boss and it was a phenomenal manager, had help. And I think what's happening is that in our society that we live in, American women, we don't have a lot of help.
That's an excellent point, because, we've been afforded the opportunity of traveling all over the world, and we've seen how marriage and family shows up very different depending upon where you are geographically. There's certain cultures and certain norms that are a part of the tradition that are so foreign to us. And to your point, I mean, listen, American women are wearing multiple hats and expected to juggle all these balls that oftentimes, to your point, there's a team of people. Even when we lived in Costa Rica, which was an amazing experience, we talk about this all the time. We lived like kings and queens. I remember I was writing for a newspaper down there, and I wrote an article about how our maid saved our marriage.
Tico Times.
Right? The Tico Times. And how having a maid, someone who was there 6 days a week, who helped out with the cooking and the cleaning and watching the kids, gave us time to be with each other, but also took a huge burden off of your shoulders because you had support.
Right.
And I think
because I was working, and like we were building a business together, we were publishing books, and so I was able to focus and just partner with you, as opposed to, I got this deadline, but I also have to get up and make dinner. I got to change diapers. We had a baby at the time. We had 2 little ones at the time. So, that just gives you a picture of how the American wife is literally running from pillar to post all day long, and she drops. And, we always remember, like, in the movies, and maybe if you're a certain age, you were told, when your husband gets home, don't just jump on him and start talking and running your mouth all day. Give him a moment to decompress. He needs some silence time. He needs some time to regenerate. And that's never been said about a woman. It's never been said that she needs a moment to get her thoughts together, to just stop. Like, one thing, when we would have these talks and you recognize what it was, you would say, guys, leave mommy alone. Just come to me. You would say to the kids, whatever it is that you need from mom, let me make an announcement. Everybody in the house, nobody bother mom. Because mom was exhausted and burned out, and mom needed some time to regenerate so that she could get back up and be mom again, and be wife, and be all the things.
At the beginning of our relationship, I didn't understand it, the need for you to get away. And when you wanted to go away, it was for the purpose of refreshing, rejuvenating, restoring, replenishing yourself. You just needed time not to be a wife, not to be a mother, not to be a business owner, not to be an employee, but just to be Danielle. And I struggle with that. I'm like, what are you talking about going somewhere? You ain't going nowhere. Wherever you going, I'm going. But over time, I began to appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I realized that when you came back as a better Danielle. Because when you were snappy and when you were mean and surly for those moments, I'm like, what's going on? Let's get you up out of here.
Yeah, you would be like, it's time for you to go.
It's time for you to go.
And it was true. It was cyclical. Especially when I had little kids, like smaller kids, it would be cyclical. Like I would be like, I'm unraveling. I need to get away, and then you begin to see, and I would come back recharged. But what's interesting in hindsight? Because of the evolution of our marriage and this awareness that you have, and we both have, about each other and our roles, our biblical responsibilities to each other, to God, and to our family, those moments, I mean, I don't know when the last time I've ever felt like I need to get away, because there's a partnership here. So like what I just said, like, now instead of, maybe there was a time when you're like, what's her problem, right? Now it's just like, okay, mom needs a moment. I can help. What questions did you have? Because, kids, we all know this. Kids have a habit of walking right past dad, directly to mom, being like, did dad send you so-and-so and so-and-so? Like, I can't tell you how often that happens. They walk right past dad and they'll be like, where's dad? Or, like whatever it is, I'll go away and they want groceries. They'll call me, hey mom, can we get, it's like, I'm away. So you having that understanding and us being able to partner the way that we do alleviates the stress. It creates a mutual connection so that I'm not alone in this. I can come to you and be like, babe, I just need, for 2 hours, I need a break. I need y'all to just leave the house or whatever. And those moments are far further and fewer in between now.
And I think I've done a good job of supporting you in that way. And, we talk about, in our last conversation, we talk about how men don't listen. And sometimes they can hear the same thing being articulated by somebody else and boom, it clicks. Though I was, over time, more receptive to the fact that you needed to get away, I remember, when I would travel and I would get on planes, oftentimes I would carry my books with me. And, when I would pay for a regular ticket and coach, but then I waive the book and somehow I wind up in first class. So there's benefits, right? And I remember...
I got to try that.
I remember talking to somebody who worked for the airline and they saw the book and they were like, you get into conversations. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, yeah, well, I deal with relationships. I'm a marriage counselor. Oh my God. So people want to start sharing what works in their relationships. And I remember this one wife saying that the one thing her husband would do that would help, she would have a day off. So think about working a job and occasionally you take a PTO, personal time off, and you still get paid for your day. Well, in the course of their 7-day marriage relationship, there would be a day that she would take off for herself. That was her private time. If she wanted to go to the spa, she'd go to the spa. If she wanted to walk in the park, she'd walk the park.
Like that.
If she wanted to sit in the bed, she could just lay in the bed all day and just do. And everybody had to go to dad. And I'm like, okay, that's another example of reinforcing this concept of giving. Because what it is, many women are leaving, and I pulled this up, it's because of a mental load. It's like a mental overwhelm. All the responsibilities and duties and obligations, it becomes exhausting. It becomes overwhelming and taxing on a woman's mind, body, spirit, emotions, and everything else.
All of it with no release or relief, right? So, I mean, you're looking for reasons. There's a million, right? Because this is us talking about just a typical married woman. This is without any crisis or anything, right? This is a woman that potentially believes in marriage and wants to build a family together, whatever your background or beliefs are. At the end of the day, you're married and you believe in marriage and you're still struggling with all these things. And we're not even considering that some women have more resources than others, right? So we're talking about, me being able to go away once in a while. And there are people that they go away. Like, we need every red cent. There's no going away. Right? So there's a lot of things that play into why a woman just gets to her wit's end. Family dynamics is another one, right? We talk about this a lot where, sometimes in-laws become a major problem, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you live with your in-laws, right? And so if there's an issue where there are no boundaries or there's soft boundaries and a wife feels displaced, just consider how difficult it could be for a wife to share living space with another woman as close to your husband as you being the mother.
It can feel like a tug of war.
Tug of war.
Because the husband loves his wife and his mother.
Of course, you love your mother, you love your wife. Yeah. And, you've got these two women all loving the same man, your husband, her son. And now there's that struggle. It's just like, well, what's my place? Why am I here? When we start counting the cost of, am I better to be here or am I better off on my own? Guess what? I'm working hard. I don't get a break. So how is marriage benefiting me? Physically, I'm exhausted, but I know I have a sexual duty, an obligation to my husband, but I'm tired. That's another duty, right? The duties, honey-do list, as men call it, goes on and on and on. And women, and you said especially educated women, are saying, you know what? On my own, there's no mutual consideration. I don't have to meet minds with you and say, hey, what do you think about us setting aside a budget for a chef so that I don't have to go in that kitchen? What do you think about us hiring a housekeeper, so that I don't have to clean after I get off my work shift? It's now up to her to design the life that she wants. And this is why some of the reasons why women are leaving.
Now listen, the concerns that we had when we first got married are the concerns that we have today, right? Because you had all those responsibilities with little kids, but the idea of hiring a private chef and hiring a housekeeper, that was just like, huh? It's offensive that you would even bring something like that up. You know what's in our bank account. You know what our budget is. And so at different seasons of your life and your marriage, you have to shift and adjust. And so to the point of men taking on more of a supportive role domestically. Now, let's talk about that, because women may complain, but if I could just be honest, there's some women, because there's different reactions. Some are naggers, and all they do is complain, and they complain so much that men can often tune a deaf ear. It's just like, whatever. They don't even value it because that's all they hear. Or there are some women who suppress and push down and just deal with it and just suffer in silence, and they don't really articulate. And then sometimes when they do, it's out of frustration, and now it's a total eruption, catches a man completely off guard. Or these conversations are had, we talk about this all the time, never share your feelings when you're in your feelings. And people aren't really sitting down and having conversations and it's almost like a vent session. Rather than having a solution-oriented conversation, it's venting, it's speaking in emotions. And so sometimes we're just not getting it. Like, we hear it, but what do we do about it? So what advice would you have for both the husband and the wife to address the concerns of how to handle domestic affairs so that a woman doesn't feel tempted to leave?
Oh my God. I mean, you putting a big old weighty question on me.
I'm just saying.
And one thing that came to mind was, what would you rather? Would you rather a nagging, explosive wife, right, who lets you know exactly where she stands, or somebody who's apathetic? I mean, to me, those are both really horrible, right? Horrible places to be in any relationship, where you can't communicate with your spouse because everything is an eruption. Everything is wrong. I can't do nothing right. Or somebody who just has nothing else to say. I personally think when you get to the point where you have nothing else to say, that's a danger zone with a woman when she has nothing else to say. I mean, there are scriptures in the Bible that tells us not to be nagging, right? It's like it'll drive our husbands to sit up on a roof and be out in the weather rather than to be in the house with you, like a dripping faucet, right? So God's wisdom says that we shouldn't nag. But when you start communicating with or when you lack the ability to communicate with your spouse so much to the point where you just stop talking, that's one foot out the door for a wife, So how do we keep wives from leaving? I think it's a hard question to answer. Of course, when I talk to women, I share even that there were times when we were younger and we had younger kids, I would just fantasize, like, if I could just be on my own and do this myself, I think every woman at some point in her marriage has had those thoughts.
Can I just pause you on that? Because literally you didn't even know this, but this is one of the reasons. Number 8, perceived better alternatives.
Yeah.
It says many women see divorce as a path to a better future. And so their imagination begins to run wild, and they create this scenario that's far better than the one that they're currently living in. Yeah. And you did struggle with that.
And it's not a reality. I mean, it is a fantasy, right? So you're fantasizing about what it could be like. But for me, my fantasy was rooted in, when I was single, I didn't have to consider anybody but myself, right? The weight is so much further and beyond my marriage. Of course, now I'm a mother. So I have children that I'm responsible for, a husband that I'm responsible for. So yes, a lot of times, especially when you're not well in the marriage, you start to fantasize about what it would be like if I didn't have to be here, what I would do differently, how I would be on my own. And it took for us to heal broken places in our marriage before I could stop fantasizing about that. So that's something to start investigating, is the broken places in the marriage. I think that there's so many broken pieces sometimes, it's hard to talk about it because you have to start sorting, right? It's just like, okay, these are the broken pieces in the relationship. What we do is we start dividing and doing the name and claim, right? Well, you did this and you're the reason for this situation. Well, yeah, but you did that and you're the reason for that situation. Well, this debt is your fault. Well, that debt is your fault. And now here we are, tit for tat. So we can't communicate about real problems because there's so much frustration and bitterness around the problem. So what happens? The problems just continue to accumulate. You sweep it under the rug. What happens is you either got a nagging, frustrated, argumentative wife, or you have one that stops talking and starts planning. And let me tell you something, going back to, you don't want your wife quiet and apathetic, because to your point, this is when the creative abilities of your wife that are designed to support you in the marriage start to run wild, and she starts to create a new reality and a plan. Next thing you know, you're left high and dry. And those conversations never did happen, but she started already strategizing her exit it's dangerous when women get quiet.
So it's interesting. Women dream about being married, but they also dream about being divorced. Let's talk
Isn't
about
that something?
It's
Isn't
interesting.
that something?
You know, women are the ones who initiate the divorce, but technically
marriage?
they initiate the marriage.
When are you gonna marry me? Put a ring
Exactly.
on it. It's us. It's us. Matter of fact, if the man is the one dreaming about marriage for a bunch of years and all that, question everything. Question everything. It's usually us.
It is. So so when you're single, when you're young, when you're looking at this idea of marriage, what is in your mind? What are you dreaming of? What are you thinking is?
Oh my goodness, I'm going to find this person that we're gonna partner so well together. You know, I'm going to be a great wife. I'm going to be a great mother. We're going to build something together. You know, and this is somebody who is, you know, educated. Like if I have a skills and a career and I'm looking for somebody that I can build with. This is female language now. It's not, I'm looking to be barefoot and pregnant and serve my husband hand and foot. No woman in America is thinking like that. We're thinking about how can we partner and build together.
I mean, Danielle, you're entrepreneurial, okay? So you have that build nature in you. You want to grow.
I wasn't raised in Amish town.
Okay, but Danielle, some women want to get married because they want to be a mother and a wife. That's what they dreamed of. But the role, like I don't even want to work. I want to take care of my husband and my family.
Yeah, do you know anyone?
Of course I do.
Who?
We have people in our program that we work with. That's been their desire, and it's been fulfilled. In addition to what?
All the other things that they desire. I'm just simply saying it's far and few in between in this generation unless you were raised in Amish town. And ladies, come through on the comments because I do want to know. I want to know who are the women of 2024 that were not raised as Mennonite women, Amish women, you know, on some reserve.
Come on.
That all they let me finish though. That all they desire is to be a wife and a mother. That's just rare to me. I don't see that. It could be because of the industry that I'm in. I'm in the business space. I work with a lot of educated, careered women, doctors, lawyers, nurse practitioners, business owners, entrepreneurs. These are women that I work with who also want to be married and want to be mothers. I don't know many who that's all they want to do.
Okay. Well, you're dealing with generation. You said in 2024. Now, if we go back a generation or two, you know, what a woman aspired to be for herself within her marriage and relationship may be different than what it is today. But to that point, okay, fine.
I personally don't know any woman, not even one. I can't think of one who that's all she wants. So I'm saying that to say, you know, you could want to partner with your husband to build something. That's where I was going with it, right? Like you're a mother, you're married, and like you and I mean, we have a business together.
Yeah.
But that's not the sum culmination of my passions and my desires. And I'm very unique and individual in the things that I want to do apart from you. So there's me and you, and then there's just me, and there's just you. And that's all women, right? We all have other passions and other desires. Sometimes they're suppressed, okay? But ultimately what I'm saying is that if it is that you came into the marriage and you wanted to build with your husband, marriage, I mean, having a family is one of those things that you want to build, but you also want to build a stable life. You know, you have dreams. There's a home that you dream of having, a neighborhood that you dream of having. Like everybody has their dreams and their passions, okay? The reason why women are escaping the situation that they were the ones that they initiated it is because what they dreamed of when the storybook opened up to the page where Snow White fell in love and found her perfect whatever was a farce, was a lie, was a fraud. And it was Disney did a great job of selling her a bag of lies, and we bought it hook, line, and sinker. Because the reality is marriage is like joining the army, because Satan hates marriage.
True.
So anything that you think is going to happen, just be prepared for opposition. That's just the nature of life. And so most of us, we're not prepared for the opposition. And I'm saying us meaning wives. We weren't prepared for the opposition because we didn't understand our role as a wife, that I'm supposed to be supporting, not just physically, but also spiritually. I'm supposed to be supporting my husband and praying and understanding how to use my words to sow the right seeds for the future. But as soon as any sign of trouble comes, I use my mouth to literally drive negativity into the ground and fortify the problems.
You said getting married is like joining the army. Now continue with that thought. In terms of what? Like
in terms of, you join the army and now there is an opposer, right? Nobody joins the army, trains with guns and all that, just to go and have a sandwich, right? You're being prepared for the battle. So life is a battle. I mean, just think about that. But when you team up with a husband and you represent your God's footprint here in the earth, and you're doing it God's way, the opposition comes for you like never before in all kinds of areas. But we're unequipped as couples because all we've been told is the fairy tale version of marriage, and it fails every time. This is why we race down the aisle to get married, and then we race to the court to get a divorce, because we fell out of love, right? So that's a term. Who's fallen out of love? Who's fallen in anywhere? It's not that. It's unspoken agreements or disagreements. People forget that we come into marriages with expectations that we never actually articulated. And so there's these agreements that we have in our head based on Hollywood about what is supposed to be. And those things fail every time. And we're disappointed and we think we fell out of love, or he's not this, he's not that, she's not this, she's not that. And in some regard, maybe it's true because we're just not equipped spiritually and biblically to be married.
Would you say that most couples, men and women, they don't have conversations before they get married or immediately after in the beginning of the marriage of what marriage actually is? Like they haven't defined it. They haven't set these expectations. They haven't, because there's a lot of assumptions that go unspoken, which ultimately lead to disappointment. And so I may be, to your point, looking at Hollywood or looking at our marriage through the lenses of what I saw in my own home with my mom and dad. Right. So I bring my own expectations, my own cultural norms, and now we're in crisis because none of it is adding up.
I mean, yes. I mean, ultimately, God wants us in agreement, period. He wants us in agreement with him first, and then each other. And when we're in agreement, we have power and authority that's outlined in the Bible. What the reality is for most of us is that we're not in agreement. You can't even be in agreement about things you never discussed, right? You have expectations you never spoke based on your upbringing. And I said this at some point, for me and you, like, I remember I used to be like so annoyed with you because you couldn't fix things. And I would be like, well, my brothers, they fix things, why can't you fix things? Now, in hindsight, what I was saying was absolutely crazy. And I'm going to tell you why. I don't know if I said this to you. I might have said this on one of my shows or something. But the reality is my perspective on what my husband should be as a grown woman was based on what I observed from little boys. Remember, I grew up with boys. So my perspective was them fixing race cars and fixing radio boxes and things like that, because that's what I saw. So whatever you're pulling from your marinade has to be put into perspective. Because here I am seeing what little boys do, because I was surrounded by boys, and thinking, how come you can't do that? And you would always be like, yeah, but I could pay for it. But you can't fix it. You see what I'm saying? And so in the same way, this is what we do. We pull things from our upbringing and our marinade, and that becomes the template, whether it's good or bad, positive or toxic. We're bringing these templates into our relationship, and there's unmet expectations because these things aren't articulated. It's like, it's what's in us. It's our template. It's our blueprint. It's how we see life, right? And we haven't come to a meeting of the minds. So to get specific, like, think about you and I, like when we were in Costa Rica and we said, we are literally about to test the word of God. You know what? We're about to put everything on this word. Like, let's see if the word is true, period. Let's not make this, how people will say, well, it didn't really mean that. It was, it's a word that people use talking about the Bible where it might be a story.
Right. So they don't take it literal.
Right. Sometimes, they don't.
It's figurative.
Figurative. That's exactly the word I was going for. So instead of taking it figuratively, let's put the word that God said, what he said, not maybe what Paul said or somebody else said, but what God said. Let's put that word to the test. And we did that.
Yeah.
But we had to come to a serious meeting of the minds at that point, because I didn't know your level of faith and you didn't know my level of faith in that way. It was only until we put it to the test where we understood where we measured up in that space, where gaps were, where I felt like maybe I had to carry you or you had to carry me, right? And when we said, okay, we're going to stand on this word, it was so deep how we had to check in and make sure, are you still standing? Do you have spiritual stamina to stand on this word with me? And many couples are so unequally yoked. This is the biggest problem. God wants us in agreement. He wants us aligned. He yokes us up. And this is why we need to understand who the Etzer Kenegdu is and what her role was, that she's not beneath. God made us equally and compatible. But here's another nugget to drop of wisdom, an epiphany. It was interesting because one of my girlfriends was called me. She's single too. And she was talking to me about this. And I was like, this is exactly what I'm talking about, literally in this season. And it is that, with the fall of man, there were curses that came upon us. God, we talk about the Etzer Kenegdu, and we talk about all that happened when he created. But after he created us equally, compatible, to rule and to dominate and to subdue, sin entered, and there were curses. One of the curses was that a wife will desire a husband and he will rule over her. That was a curse. The curse was broken. Jesus has come. Redemption has been received. We have received redemption. But you can't be redeemed from what you have not acknowledged and what you do not accept. And so when we think about the curse and we think about who did this, like God created us equally. Why is there such an imbalance? Why throughout the world has the woman been crushed down and beneath and under? Shush and submit. Be seen, not heard. Serve. Your opinions don't count. Cover everything up. All of what happened. This is all around the world, which we talked about how women's lib had to come liberate women, right? When God designed us, liberation wasn't needed. He made us equal and compatible. And we need to recognize that the curse has been broken. Restoration has already occurred. All you have to do is receive the truth, husbands and wives, and operate accordingly. Stop thinking that your wife is a useless servant or an accompaniment to your main show. But God designed you to dominate together equally and powerfully. And we need to get back to the garden. And we are free to get back to the garden now, because Jesus has already come to redeem us.
This is interesting. It kind of, what you're saying kind of reminds me of Juneteenth, the holiday that we now have, where the slaves were liberated. They were freed.
But they didn't know.
But there was those in the South who did not know.
Didn't know.
And they were still living in that same enslaved reality until somebody had to come and remind them, listen, you're free. You don't have to live like this. And I think, to your point, a lot of us haven't acknowledged that, and understood it, and we're still living by the curse. And we need to go back to the garden, what it was before the fall. Because of what Christ did and because of this revelation, we have the ability to live the life in the garden the way it was initially established from the foundations of the earth. And you have to be teachable, you have to be coachable, you have to be willing to change.
You have to be willing to be untaught.
And that's the point. Because when you learn, you have to unlearn.
Yeah.
And I use this example all the time. There was a time in history around the world where people were taught that the world was flat, and then some scientists came along and said, no, it's actually round. Now, whether it's round or flat, whatever. The point is,
well, they used to teach of the dome.
Okay.
They used to teach of the dome because biblically, we know from the word that he separated the waters, right? And he put the waters above and then the waters below.
With the firmament above.
At the firmament. And, and then after he created the water above and the water beneath, then he solidified the water above and called it the firmament.
Yeah.
So there was a time when you were taught that.
Yeah.
Now that's not taught.
Right.
So now,
It's not taught.
Now we're hearing flat earth, and there is no flat earth, but there is a firmament and a dome. Over there.
But the point is, new information, that's a whole nother conversation, which we can have. But new information comes in.
Read your word.
And we don't accept new because we're still holding on to old. And sometimes you have to give up old information for new information, because that's when transformation comes. And so many people are stuck in old, antiquated thinking and philosophies and mentalities and convictions that don't serve them, that don't serve their marriage. And you have to be teachable and coachable to accept something completely new in order to live this life that we're talking about. Yeah. And I think what happens is, if you're doing your own personal journey and you got that revelation and we're not doing anything together, when you present it to me, I'm struggling with it. I'm not receiving it.
Ears are
you
closed.
Crazy. Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is why we say this is one thing that we did in the beginning of our relationship. We would read books together. I remember we came from two different denominations. We were both Christians, but we said, why don't we read the word together and figure out what we collectively believe? Yeah. Because these differences can cause separation, division, agitation, frustration. And it's so important that couples learn to grow together, because what we're talking about is the daily struggle that couples have in their relationships.
Absolutely.
They're just not on one accord. You talked about agreement, and that's why you wrote that book, Let's Agree to Agree. Why did you write it?
Because think about the title, Let's Agree to Agree. But you're used to saying, well, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. Satan has you. You can't move. You can't even move forward. There's no such thing as oneness and moving forward in togetherness when you agree to disagree. And that's where Satan has many of us. So the disagreement may not even look like we're fussing and fighting. I could be in disagreement with you at peace. We just agree to disagree. For many couples, that's how they actually wave the white flag, to agree to disagree, instead of finding something, anything to agree on. Because couples they literally decide to be out of alignment. They have thought that agreeing to disagree was a good thing.
Exactly.
Like, let's just agree. We agreed to disagree.
That was their form of agreement.
That was their form of agreement.
As crazy as that sounds.
Your form of agreement was to be in disagreement.
Yeah.
And so epic fail, because now spiritually and physically in some cases, because spiritually for sure there's no alignment. And so spiritually you can't conquer. You cannot level mountains. You can't do anything biblically that the Bible says you can do, because you're not in agreement, period. When you agree to disagree with your husband, you also break the 3-chord strand agreement that you have with God. So now you've eliminated God out of the journey as well. Physically, you could move forward, right? Because we agreed to disagree. So guess what? I'm going to go do me and you're going to go do you. No oneness, no alignment, which the Bible speaks of and says that a house that's divided cannot stand. So you must be in agreement. It is a non-negotiable that you must agree. And this is an area of growth for couples, because one person always wants to be right. Yeah. So if you got to be right and they got to be wrong, you're going to have a hard time operating in spiritual law that brings you both exactly what you desire.
So I want you, listen, let's pause, because you said something that really leans into the truth. It is a spiritual law. Now, here we are in these physical bodies on this earth realm, and we live according to natural law. And so a lot of times the things that we're hearing just don't make logical sense. Well, it doesn't, because spiritual law supersedes natural law, and God operates in the realm of the spirit. And when we obey those laws and principles and understand our authority, our spiritual authority that we have in this natural earth realm, we're able to do as a couple what other couples can't do, because they're not operating according to these principles. And a law is not something something that you can break. Let's just understand that. The law was created before you. It's going to exist when you die. It was always there. It is unbreakable. You can disobey a law. And if you disobey the law will break you. The law will break your marriage. The law will break the union that you're trying to have. And so if we truly understood that agreement was a principle, and guess what? Is not a respecter of persons.
No.
Anybody could apply the principle or the law of agreement and get results.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, most divorces today, when you choose, why are you divorcing? Irreconcilable differences, which means that we have spent our entire relationship in a space of not coming together in agreement about anything. And it's to the point where we can't even agree on where we're going to eat for dinner. We can't agree on like basic
Those
things.
are little things, right?
Little things. And if you struggle with the little things, you're going to struggle with the major things. Mm-hmm. And that's why I find that so many couples are. It's so hard. Sometimes you go into these counseling sessions and you're just like, what in the flipping world? Where do we
start? It's like a compass that's spinning all, you know how like that happens in certain places of the world, this compass don't even know which way to turn, because it's like you get into these conversations and you can't find one space, you can't land on one subject where they're in alignment. It's literally doomsday in that marriage. They're a marriage, they're in a great deal of amount of pain because they don't communicate. And so they come together in a session to communicate and you see the dysfunction because they typically don't even talk to each other. That's how bad it is.
It is.
But you'll notice that people that have learned what we're talking about, these spiritual laws and how to align and come together, you're confused by how come everything that they do, they have victory. How do they do what they do? How is it that everything that they decide blows up? Everything that they approach, their success. It's because they're in agreement. It's because there is mutual alignment and mutual agreement in that marriage. And the Bible is clear, and Hasani said it, you cannot break the law. The law will either bless you or break you. And when you are in alignment with the word of God, you have sweatless victories.
Danielle, when I heard this, what I'm about to say, it blew my mind because I didn't understand it at first until I began to study it. And it was, if you obey the laws of nature, the laws of nature will obey you. And I said, okay, that's interesting. What does that mean? And it was given an example of an electrician. Think about it. Let's just say a storm comes, knocks out all the electricity. I'm flipping switches to try to get the thing to turn back on. It's not working. Why? Because I don't understand electricity, energy, and the laws that govern it. So I bring in an electrician. An electrician comes in with his tools and starts rewiring things because he or she knows how the energy flows, the current of the energy. And because he's obeying the laws of energy, he can manipulate it in certain types of ways to get those laws to obey him. Well, what is the electrician's will? To have the lights come on, to have things be powered. And so likewise, as a couple, when we truly understand these laws and principles, then we can use them for our benefit, for the benefit of our marriage to advance us as a couple. And that's why so many people are exceeding and excelling in so many different areas. And we're struggling trying to figure out how in the world are they doing it?
Facts. I mean, these are the questions that they ask, right? They're scratching their head. They turn to each other and they blame. Like, man, if I had that husband, I would be all right because they just doing this and that and the third. Like, it's no problem. You have a lot of the comparing going on, right? Because you're looking from the outside in. You don't know. You know, there's a song by Mary Mary, and it's talking about basically, you don't know what I'm doing. And what is that song? And she's basically talking about how you don't know when she's getting down on her knees and praying. And that's really the time that she spends getting things done. And then you see me showing up and blowing up. So you don't know what's going on behind the scenes in that marriage. You don't know how they come together and partner on everything. You don't know, because I said sweatless victories, and you do experience sweatless victories, but you also experience storms together. But when you have each other and you know how to partner in every storm, okay, the storm passes miraculously in ways. The other thing that happens is through spiritual maturity, when you learn these concepts, because for many people listening, they're so far from this. There's zero alignment. This might be the first time they're ever thinking about, wow, I need to come into agreement with my spouse in order to have victory in the areas of my life. But when you have learned this and you get into agreement, okay, we don't know what we're doing. We've never done this before, but we are making an agreement today that we're never going to go to bed about any struggle without finding some form of agreement. We will never close our eyes an evening without being in alignment and agreement again on something. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you agree about everything. That's why I said you need to find something to align and to be in agreement with, because the Holy Spirit can flow through that agreement. There is a break in the electricity in that analogy when there is no agreement. But after a while, you will find, because you would like to think like, man, I got this. Me and Hasani, we know how to come into alignment and agree on anything, and we do. But the challenges get greater. The higher you go, see, this is how God does things. Like, you notice that some people, they face the same struggle everywhere they go because they haven't passed the test. If gossiping is your weakness, every time you turn around, there's an opportunity for you to gossip. And you keep saying, I don't want to gossip anymore. I don't want to gossip. But every time you turn around, there's an opportunity and you fail the test. Or every job you go to, there's that one person that gets under your skin, is a micromanager. You hate micromanaging. Everywhere you go, every new job, every situation, you face that same challenge because you haven't overcome it yet. But when you overcome it, you will find you no longer see that person or that circumstance anymore. It's almost like your goggles, your perspective, your lenses shift. You don't see those things anymore. But then there's always a new demon. Every level you get to. Please don't take for granted the blessings. When you're looking at people out here that are so successful and you're thinking, I want what they have. We should be able to do this. We should be able to do that. You better be prepared. Your spirit better be right. You better know how to come together, touch and agree, and cast down some devils, because every level you get to, there's a new demon, a new devil ready and waiting to ravish you. And you have got to be able to go back to your spouse, touch and agree, and overcome that next hurdle.
And every level has a new devil. Goes back to what you were saying before when you said the opposition. And the fact of the matter is, when you're talking about laws, that's a part of it. Like with everything you attempt to do, there's going to be opposition. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be some opposing force coming against you. When I think about a plane, when I've spoken to pilots, they say the reason why a plane takes off is because there's resistance coming against it. Like there has to be some type of pressure that you receive that you're fighting against to elevate you to get to a higher place. And I think a lot of times couples throw in the towel, call it quits, give up at the first sight of any type of opposition, because the assumption is, well, other people don't have to go what we go through. Why are we going through this? And they don't realize pressing through allows you to get to the other side. I recently heard a story about somebody who was explaining how they were entering into a storm and the rain was coming down and there was lightning and cars were just literally stopping on the side of the road. And the driver, the person in the back seat told the driver, keep going, keep going, keep going. He's just like, but the storm is coming. Everybody's stopping. We got to stop. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And so he kept going. He was afraid. He was scared. He didn't think he was going to make it, but he kept going. And as soon as he broke through that storm and saw the sun, then the guy said, stop. He said, why would I stop now? We've gotten through the storm. Because I want you to take a look back at all the people who stopped before they got their breakthrough. And the reality is, if you keep pushing and pressing, I think this was Roland who was just sharing the story. If you keep pushing and pressing, you will get to the other side. But see, that's a part of the journey that if you are not aligned with your spouse and one is saying stop and one is saying go, this is why the Bible says, can two walk together unless they be in what? Agreement. So there's power in agreement.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Anne Marie, and I'm from Idaho. This is Todd.
Yep, I'm Todd Garner, her husband.
We just got done with the intensive with Hasani. It was actually very powerful and incredible. I came in extremely hurt, ready for divorce, and now I actually have hope. So thank you, Hasani.
I was extremely impressed with everything I saw in the way of videos from Hasani, and I look forward to this. And talking with people prior to coming, I became a little bit reluctant because of the work involved, but I'm discovering that the work is on me, and that's going to help her heal because I was the one that offended. And all I care about is seeing her heal. So the money, that was kind of a pinch, but at the end of the day, I discovered that you save money this way. Otherwise, we would spend the hours and days and weeks with him at that rate, which comes out a lot more. And I just said, well, we're going to have to bite the bullet and do it. And I'm really, really glad that we did. And I'm looking forward to when we have the 1-year anniversary.
It was totally worth it.
Totally worth it. We totally recommend that people, if you're looking into this, make this the option you choose.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hasani.
Thank you.
One of the reasons why we find that so many couples split, we hear this all the time, we just grew apart. Now the reality is, we believe that when you enter into a marriage, there's a uniqueness to this relationship that you have, but you don't lose your self-expression, you don't lose your individual voice, you don't lose your identity, but some people may, because they're guilty of doing marriage wrong, and we have to figure out how to do it right. But there are certain people who just grow apart because there was no shared interest, no commonality, there was no togetherness that they established from the beginning. And they've lived two separate individual lives. Their finances are separate, their friends are separate, they're going on vacation. So they're just doing life differently. And so how common is that with the couples or the women that you work with, that there's no unity, there's no oneness, there's no togetherness in their relationships?
I don't think I can honestly speak collectively about that, but what I can say is that I co-sign that people grow apart because that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening, right? Because if you think about it, we're supposed to be two that become one, right? When you met me and I met you, we both had our own garden, for lack of a better term, right? And so what I planted in my garden, whatever has bloomed, you experience that. Same with you, right? So I came to you with what I came to you with, my skills, my spirituality, my physical health, whatever I came to you with is what you got. But when we get married, we're supposed to become one. We're supposed to have a shared garden, right? We're supposed to start creating our own rituals together, sharing our faith, right? How we're raising our kids together. All these are new seeds we're planting in our collective garden. So when you have a couple that has no oneness, they're still with their garden over here. I'm just going to plant this in my garden, right? This is, how many times have you heard people say, well, this is for me? Wives say that a lot. This is for me, because she's given her whole garden over to her husband when she came into the marriage. And so now when there's no alignment, or when you have not properly became one together, when you have not properly mixed well, bonded, that's the word, bonded. At some point or another, a wife is starting to say, like, I've given everything up. I'm going to have this over here for me. I'm going to do this for me. So now I'm planting my own seeds. Those seeds could be financial seeds. Those seeds could be education. I'm building my education over here. I'm doing all this for me. And so now the marriage is doing this instead of coming together as a strong, fortified unit. And this is why I ask women all the time, like, do you want to be married? Because you have a lot of women that if you listen to them talk, they don't sound like they want to be a wife. And it's because they haven't understood what that actually means.
Can we stop there? Let's stop there, because we've had conversations about how there's a difference between being a married woman and a wife. Likewise, there's a difference between being a married man and a husband, because when a lot of them are targeted and marketed to, particularly with programs, like the focus is very different. The focus is very different. And so When you're talking about a husband and a wife, you're talking about his or her relationship to and responsibility to another individual. When you're talking about a married woman and a married husband, you're talking about an incalculable number of things that may have nothing to do with the actual spouse. And so to your point, there's a lot of wives that don't want to be wives. They just want to be married women. A lot of husbands that don't want to be husbands. They just want to be married men.
You don't want the role.
And the relationship is the last thing on their list of priorities.
Right. You don't want the role of a wife. You don't want to establish an institution. What you want is to be courted and to be dated. You want to, go out and have nice meals. You want to be friends, right? That's the thing now. Women want to divorce and they just want to be friends. You want to.
We're going to talk about that one.
You want You want to, you want to have the dating experience extended. And that's just not a reality. And that's why there's such a great disappointment, because no marriage is going to feel like, the first few months of your dating season, because now there's a foundation that has arisen. Just like if you were to start a business, you're super excited about your cupcake business. You love making cupcakes. It's your passion and you love decorating. But then when your business begins to grow and other departments have to be erected and other people have to manage those things, it becomes a responsibility, right? And all the responsibilities of this thing that you used to love and really enjoy and was your passion start to weigh on your life and consume time. It's the same thing with a marriage. There are responsibilities that wives have. We know what those responsibilities are. It's just that a lot of times women have been hurt. They've been wounded by different circumstances, or they've been worn all the way the heck out, and they're just looking for an escape. It's easier. You know how they say it's cheaper to keep her?
Yeah.
It is, because you know what? Guess what? If you have something, she's taking half, period, or more. But it's also oftentimes easier to be apart as a wife. It's easier to just be friends.
It's interesting. I was just watching a celebrity who was interviewed on a radio show, and they were just like, you married and now you're divorced. Would you marry again? And she was just like, nope,
heck no.
Not married again. Check that box. Did it, done it.
Oh,
I'm good.
Really?
Yeah. And I was just like, wow, how reflective.
Yeah. I said this recently.
It's such a representation of so many women, right?
Yeah.
So many men, if you ask the average man, will he marry again? 9 times out of 10, he'll say he will.
I literally asked you this the other day.
Uh-huh.
And I talked about this a few months back we were just having a sidebar conversation and I was having an epiphany. And that is that men remarry. I even looked up the statistics on this to find that this is facts, but I had the epiphany first. And that was that most men, if they get a divorce, if they're the marriage type, if they're not out here just trying to be in the streets, most men, whatever happens, if they are a widow, if their wife dies, they are definitely remarrying. If their wife dies, they are remarrying.
The Bible says it's not good for a man to be alone.
Yes, it does. Even if there was a tumultuous relationship and they divorce, and not oftentimes, because it goes both ways, but when you split, you're splitting assets. So it really destroys your financial stability. Man. It's so destructive. Even after that, men are going to marry again. They will marry. But most women take that with some pause. They know they don't want to be alone. Okay? They know they don't want to be alone. But do they want to marry? Do they want to combine homes again? Do they want to take on the responsibility, especially women of a certain age? Because a woman of a certain age, she has been married, she has had children, raised children, right? And she's at the curious stage of her life. She is actually like, you know what? I've put my life on hold a long time to take care of other people. And I enjoyed it. I did a great job. But now I want to travel. I want to do me. I don't want to be bogged down, held down. I want a companion. And they get into trouble there because if you want to do things biblically, you got some questions to answer. Mm-hmm. You all right? So, but a lot of women will say, nah, not for a long time, if ever. I want to be with somebody. I want a friend. I want a partnership. But do I want to get married again?
Okay, but why? Why? Because a part of marriage is companionship. So we talk about You have your relationship and you have your marriage. Your relationship represents companionship. Your marriage represents partnership. So are we saying that after women have partnered with their husbands and fulfilled all those responsibilities, duties, and obligations, that they're good now? They just want the companionship piece and not the
That's
responsibility
exactly it.
that comes along with the relationship.
Right. What husband how many husbands would honestly say, I'm here to partner with my wife and make sure she fulfills her purpose?
I don't know how many consciously are saying that, because they're probably not even thinking about marriage in that context. A lot of times when people get married, they're thinking about how it benefits and serves them.
People or men?
Well, men, I'm going to speak for men.
Yeah.
I mean, but Danielle, to your point earlier, women too, because when they first got married, one of the things they were thinking about was the dream and, how great it would be and all the things that they were experiencing, the house and the neighborhood and the vacations and the this and that. So yes, they were thinking about how it would serve them.
I didn't say all that, but let me bring some balance to what you just said, okay? Because even a woman who is thinking, of the benefits of the Hollywood version of marriage, right? So just being with somebody and building with somebody, she is still bringing with her this awareness that it is her that is going to partner with the husband, that it is her that's going to help him fulfill his purpose and his calling, that is her that is going to turn a house into a home, that it is her that is going to birth and raise children. Let's not take birth lightly.
Yeah.
Okay? So however many children I'm going to allow to invade my space for 10 months and then press them through my vagina, right? Like, we know as wives that it is work. We know that. And so men are not saying, I'm going to get me a wife and you know what, I'm going to make sure she fulfills her purpose and her calling. It's not designed that way. That is the answer. That is the reason why a woman, after having done that and understood the mantle of responsibility that is on a woman to be a suitable helper, not just being married, because you went back to just because you're married doesn't make you a wife. There are lots of married women that have no interest in being a suitable helper, are not here to help you at all, are only here to help themselves, to partner with you to further their role and their position in their career. And those are the ones that really struggle, because there's nothing but competition in a marriage like that. There is division and competition. Yeah, you might show up real well in public. You look good, you have it all going on, and everybody looks at you like you're the it couple, but behind closed doors, the reality is there's zero oneness, no connection, and it is a competitive adversarial relationship. When it's done God's way, it's not. See, when it's done God's way, I understand my role as a suitable helper, and I know my investment. And the investment is reciprocated. Yeah. It is a reciprocated investment because God designed it to be that way. So all things are answered and fulfilled in his way and not in the other way. But because a wife knows the investment and maybe got burned, right? Because, it's interesting. Even widows, I actually interviewed a widow on one of my first podcasts, and she was just like, she was married 50 something years. So she was older, but people get married and remarried at all ages. Okay. And she was like, I ain't doing that again.
I remember that.
I ain't doing that again.
I remember that.
I'm like, oh, you're widowed?
Yeah.
She was happy to answer the questions, and she was straight up and down. Yup, I did this, I did that. We had a great marriage. I was this kind of wife. She was a suitable helper, but she ain't never doing that again.
Okay, so okay. I hear you. The widow said it. The celebrity I just saw said it. Many of these women are saying it. What lesson can we as husbands take from this? Like, how can we begin to show up as husbands in a marriage? First of all, we're not trying to give you the next guy an alley-oop for an I do, but what can we do in the marriage so that you don't resent being in it, so that you're not tempted to get out of it? How can we show up for you? Now, I know the suitable helper is there to help her husband fulfill visions and things of that nature. That's how God designed you, and we receive it and we thank you. But there are men who do reciprocate. Now, for those who do, kudos. For those who don't, what lessons can they learn from those who do? Like, what are women looking to receive from the husband that make them feel like they're benefiting from the marriage as well?
A suitable helper wants safety and security. I mean, it's that simple. Safety and security. If I am a suitable helper and I'm here to help you be your best self, show up, and that, like, you know, it might sound a little antiquated to people, but that's not saying that the wife is sitting home and has no purpose, no value, nothing going on, right? If you're a suitable helper, you understand all the nooks and crannies of life and marriage that you play a significant role in for your husband and for your family. And that might include a career and all those things. But when you know that is your role and you're doing that, and there's no safety, there's no security, meaning I can't trust you, you're unfaithful, you don't do what you say you're gonna do, you don't keep a job, right? When the responsibilities of the husband constantly fall on the back of the wife, when she's here to help, God did not say, I'm not supposed to be the head, you're supposed to be the head. That means that you're the one leading the charge and I'm here to help. But a lot of wives they are the charge. They're not just helping, they're leading, they're running, they're doing all the things. And they don't have safety and security in it. So I can't even trust you. I can't depend on you. I can't rely on you. Maybe you don't even have a vision for me to help with. So I'm constantly casting vision, but it keeps falling on stony ground because I'm not supposed to be the visionary. You are. But I mean, I have great ideas. I have lots of great ideas. I'm just trying to throw you a bone and hope you catch one, but you ain't catching none because you're the visionary and God already put something in you, but you're so out of line. See, this goes deep because, you know, now we need to look at, okay, why is this person out of line? Where is the, developmental lag in this man that he is so disconnected from his own purpose, that this wife is trying to give him a purpose. And this is the horrible cycle because a wife is going to be like, fine, I got all these ideas. I'll go do it myself. And there's the cycle. Here we go again.
Now, for the last 10 years, Danielle and I have been doing private marriage intensives, last chance weekends with couples from around the world of all faith traditions, cultural backgrounds, geographical locations. I mean, any difference and variation of a woman you can think of, we've worked with. And all of them, all of them, when it all comes down to it, after we've gone through all these sessions, when we're getting to the heart of the matter, every single woman, you would think they read from the same book because they all say the same thing. I just want to be or feel safe. They all say it, Danielle. They want safety and security. And thank you for sharing that because that's something that we all need to be reminded of. And I think to your point, it's going to look and feel different for each wife, but they all have the same inherent need. And I think if we truly understood what that meant, and maybe men and women aren't having the conversations, a lot of times, it's said that women speak the language of feeling and emotion, men speak the language of logic or action. So we're speaking two different dialects. So we're hearing the words, but we're not truly understanding what that actually means. To what do you mean? I got locks on the doors. What do you mean? I got cameras around. What do you mean? We got dogs. We got a gate. What do you mean? I don't give you safety and security. Yes, I do. What do you mean? I'm physically stronger than you. I'm walking near you. I'm protecting you from. And it can mean that
if he's doing that.
If he's doing that, it can mean that, but it means a whole lot more. And so that's worthy of a deep dive conversation that a couple should have. And truth be told, sometimes a woman may need that, not sometimes, all the times, but the struggle is knowing how to articulate it in a way that he can understand it and receive it. There's a gap sometimes.
There is, I think so. I think there's a gap of understanding and, maybe the emotions do get involved and women have a hard time articulating without frustration and anger. Especially if there's just been so many disappointments. There's just like now a frustration and an apathy, a lack of belief, You get to the point where you feel like you're wasting your time and wasting your words. You don't want to say the same thing for the 100th time. You know, for what? Like, just, we're already doing us. Like, you do you, I'll do me, whatever. It's easier and cheaper to just stay married, right? And just do our own things. And that's what you see in a lot of couples. When couples come here and they seem so hopeless, a lot of times that's where they're at in their marriage. They've just given up. They're just married because financially they're bound, and it would just be so destructive to split. You know, so they just have resolved to like stick with it. When they come here as the last chance, the new lease on life that they gain, realizing that there's actually something that we could do about it, realizing, oh my God, I've been married 29 years, 30 years, and I never, ever understood these things. They're blown away by it. They never knew that they always had the authority the entire time.
Man, we can go on. This has been an awesome conversation. What another great end to an amazing podcast. You're watching After Infidelity. Stay tuned for our next episode. It's going to get even deeper. Take care, guys.
Cool. I have cramps.
Really?
Yeah.
That was good. How long was that? Hour 15. That was longer than the last time.